Alright, I'm going to show you how to get these little plastic barrel end things off of these wire connectors. And it could go for any connector, go for a ring connector, spade, or these little push connectors, anything like that. It doesn't matter. I always want to get these little blue barrel things off, or they could be red or yellow. It just, this color denotes the diameter, the size, the gauge of the wire that these connectors work with. And the reason I don't like these connectors, one, like I said, they're not heat shrinkable, but then when you do take a piece of heat shrink tubing and stick it on there, if you find one that's big enough to go around this little barrel, it's almost never shrinks enough to make a good seal around the wire itself, the wire that's coming out of here. You know, if you used these are blue, so they're 14 to 16 gauge connectors. If you used a 14 gauge wire, it might seal up okay, but if you used a 16 or even use these blue connectors on an 18 gauge wire, then the heat shrink tubing probably won't get small enough to make a good seal. So I like to take these things off of there, and let me show you how I do that real quick. Just take your little connector, grab it with some pliers, and you put a heat source on this little barrel end, and I'm using a heat gun, so let me start. So that's enough heat. It doesn't take very much. And then you just grab some other kind of pliers. I'm just using wire dikes because that's what I have around, and it makes it real soft and it just pulls right off. If you try to do this without putting heat on there, it's very likely that you're basically going to destroy your little connector. I've tried it before and it didn't work. So now we have that little barrel off of there. We just strip our wire, stuff it in there. I always like to solder my connections when possible. Crimp it down, and then you can take an appropriate size. This is the same heat shrink I just showed you a minute ago, so this is a little big for this, but you take the appropriate size heat shrink tubing around your connector, around your wire, and now you've got a good tight seal. So that's what I like to do with these. You know, like I said, these little connectors like this with the non-heat shrinkable little barrel around them are double in price of what the actual heat shrinking ones are. So for these little butt connector joints, you really don't have a choice but to buy the heat shrinkable kind. But for any type of end connector, the spade or the push or the ring connector, I buy the cheaper ones, pull this off, take some regular old heat shrink tubing, seal it around there, and go with that. So I just thought I'd share that with you, and now I'll get going on the truck again.